Welcome to the very exciting world of pastel painting. We're going to look at pastel portrait painting, particularly in this class. So this is our opportunity now to become familiar with pastels. Pastels are the most direct form of painting that there is. And as we go through an introduction to pastel, we need to know that there's a few different types of pastel, there's a few different types of paper, and we want to make sure that we are all on the same page, working in the same way when we're doing this project. So first I want to start with the paper. It's pretty easy. We use Canson paper, and the variety of paper is called Mi Tientes, Mi-Tientes. We use either steel gray or warm gray paper. Now there's a reason for this. If you are working on a white piece of paper, everything you put down looks dark. And so you begin to get a image that's too light. We're afraid of going dark. And I'm always going to be telling you, go into the dark. You know, you've got to travel into the dark to make this work. So as we're talking, we want to make sure that we understand that we always are using a tinted paper, a paper that will give us that middle tone. Now, if we go with a black paper, we have the opposite problem. Everything we put on looks too light, so we end up making something very dark, plus that black begins to show through, and we end up looking like the Elvis paintings you get at the corner gas station. I know they don't happen much anymore, but when I was a kid, there was always people selling Marilyn Monroe and Elvis painted on black velvet out on front of a gas station. We don't want that. So, Mi Tientes paper. The paper has two sides. Now, this is the confusing part. I use the back side. The front side, and I know that the camera's not going to pick this up, so let me describe it. If you buy it in a store, the back side will have a sticker on it. Usually that sticker easily comes off. Hobby Lobby and Michaels both sell it, and when they sell it with a sticker on the back side. The front side has a texture to it that looks like a screen. That texture comes through when you're painting. And if you're trying to paint realistically, that really gets in the way. You just can't use it. So we want to make sure that we're using the back side of the paper. That back side gives us a smooth surface, but enough tooth to hold the pastel. When we talk about tooth in paper, it means there's just a texture that's enough that it catches all the little pastel pieces. Pastel itself is a broad category. We have soft pastels, which some people call chalk pastels. That's really an inaccurate description. Chalk is its own thing. So we're going to set that aside, and we're going to call it soft pastel. Soft pastel acts like the chalk you were familiar with as a kid, perhaps sidewalk chalk, but it is much purer. And by that I mean there's pigment that's a powder. Pigment is the color, and you have the powdered pigment with just a little bit of gum tragacanthin, which is a binder, and that gum just holds it until it gets on the surface of the paper. So what we're really painting with is a direct pigment onto the paper. If I have oil paint, I've got oil suspending the pigment when I put it on canvas. If I'm doing acrylic painting, I have acrylic suspending that onto the canvas or the paper or whatever I'm painting on. So, and that's plastic. So now I've got plastic between me and the color. And watercolor, the water's diluting it and spreading it out, and it's absorbing into the paper. Pastel allows the pigment to stand up right on the surface of the paper. It's there for us, brilliant, and it's like 1,000 gems shining, because each time I make a mark, if I don't smush it, a lot of people are guilty of smushing, and you're going to find that I really hate smushing. What I mean by that is taking a thumb and moving it around. If you're doing it on a background, I might not get too upset, But what we want to do is to keep those little particles of pigment at random orientations to the light so that it reflects more, it becomes brighter. We see the colors as being more vibrant and alive. And so we want to make sure that that's present and we're not, overdoing it, especially smooshing it down. So no smooshing, no finger rubbing on theirs. It's just going to be my rule. If you want to go after you learn pastel painting, smoosh away. You can use a chamois cloth as some people do, or a cotton t-shirt, but not for this assignment. So pastel, as I said, is a wide category. There's also oil pastels. We're not using those. Oil pastels are really more like a crayon, and they are basically solid oil paint. And there's a place for those. You can make really beautiful, dense, alive images with oil pastel, but they cannot be mixed with our soft pastel. This is a demonstration in soft pastel painting. So again, if you have oil pastels, we're going to set those aside. They're perfectly wonderful, but we're leaving them for another occasion. So this is going to be only about the soft pastels. Now, when we get to soft pastels, ironically, we have a variety starting with hard soft pastels, things like the new pastels, which we are going to be using here today. They're very hard, very easy to control. It's very nice for somebody who's starting out if you're trying to create the detail and you want to make sure you have a nice hard edge and you can control what's going on to the paper. We go down through brands, and every brand has a different hardness. When you get to the really, really expensive brands, they are going to be vibrant and rich. Things like Sennelier, they are like butter. I have to tell you, it's a sensual experience to paint with some of these expensive pastels. I'm not going to show you this because my assumption is if you're in my college class, you are already struggling to keep up with all the things that you need. And if you are in my college class, we are providing you with new pastels, as well as a variety of other softer pastels like Grumbacher that you can use that are not real expensive. But if you like pastel painting like I do, you will have a studio filled with pastels. I make my own pastels. I buy soft pastels. I buy hard pastels. Pastel pencils in all shapes, sizes, colors. Ones with wood on the outside, ones without wood. They're all over the place. So when I'm showing you these things today, I want you to understand that this is just the introduction to what you can do. Now, we've got our paper, the Canson Mitiente steel gray or warm gray paper. I suggest you cut that in half. That's what I have here, is a half sheet. It's 25 inches long when you get it. If you can do that, make a beautiful painting. But my feeling is you don't need to go that big. So let's start small and cut that in half. I actually cut it in half and then cut a quarter off the bottom for this particular painting I'm doing. This is my mother-in-law. It actually is taken from an image when she was recovering from surgery. She looked hopeful, strong, and I thought, let's make this into a painting. It'll be a good example to show to all of you of how I'm moving through it. So this is a painting I intend to finish and I intend to use later on. The technique we're going to use is actually called wild color pastel painting. Now, it's wild color because we're going to basically limit ourselves to 6 or 7 pastels in the beginning. This will not be true for the hair, and it's not going to be true for finishing the eyes. It's not true for the clothes, and we can accent with some other colors later on. So we are going to start with black, and I know that it's not going to show very well in this video. I'm going to try to show it against the white here, see if that shows. Then, beautifully speaking, if you can see this, we are dealing with a violet, a purple color that's quite dark, that comes in the new pastel. If you're using another pastel set, you want to come to a violet that's about this dark and that has the same blueness to it, because this is what really gives the beauty to the flesh. Then the third pastel is this. It's actually called bottle green. And new pastel, it's 378P. And we're going to use this quite liberally on our piece. When it comes to reds, you can go anywhere from the blue reds to the orange reds. You can see in my image here, I'm going to want a lot of more orangey reds. So I'm choosing this. And so this here is a beautiful piece. This one's 266P if you're looking through your own set. So that's number 4. Number 5 is going to be a yellow. Now I prefer something that is an earthy yellow and a little lighter. I think this is washing out a little more than it needs to. It's a little darker than what you're seeing on the video, but it is a beautiful yellow, and this one, the number is broken off, but you can see an earthy yellow, so what we would call a yellow ochre. If you're not familiar with painting, that means nothing to you. So that's fine as well. You know, you don't need to know that. So that's number 5. When we come to number 6, you get to be a little bit of a creative genius. You can use just white, and I use white as like my number 7 color, but you can also use a bluish white. That looks pretty white on the video, but it's actually slightly blue. You can use a yellowish white, which again, I think this one looks a little more yellow on the video, so that's an option. Or, as what I'm going to use in this one, a pinkish. So this is actually a bluish red that is very, 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 very light. And this is what I'm going to use as my white. And then I'll use white as an accent in the end. So that leaves us with just 7 colors. The black, violet, bottle green, red of your choice, whichever red fits your subject, the yellow, which is earthy yellow and light, and then a pinkish light, and then a white just for accents. For example, on her glasses, perhaps on her cheek, you can see this. So all of those things have to be prepared. So when you start this project, you want those new pastels or similar soft pastels in the similar color available to you. And then comes the big thing. Before you do this project, this is so important. You need a good reference. Now, I'm fine with you getting somebody to sit in a chair for the hours it's going to take you to do this and working from life. That would be fantastic. That's our ideal. And if you can do that, I really would love to see it. So you can always respond to this video. You can put comments on on the YouTube link here, but please make sure that it is a good photo. And for this project, I recommend a frontal image, because that's going to be the easiest.